Hello. Happy Sunday. Happy SciVive Sunday, y'all. It is good to be back. I feel like I've been gone for a while in terms of SciVive streams. The last one I did, I think, was with Hexo, and that was great. That was good times. And yeah, been doing a bit of traveling, bit of just floating through life right now. So it's nice to have a steady spot right now that I can stream. And I'm really excited about our guest today. I've seen, so I know Brent through the SciVive Telegram channel. And that's how just I came across his name. And I see him posting pretty often in there about things that should be in that channel because there's a lot of bots, there's a lot of spam and people that aren't really talking about longevity or survival. But Brent's one of those guys that's constantly in that chat, posting different articles, posting YouTube videos, and really just spreading the word about longevity and survivalism. So I had no clue until just a few days ago how big of a deal he is and how involved he is with the longevity community. And it's exciting to me to have someone who's a bit of an expert. I'm hoping someday, maybe someday I could stream with Aubrey de Grey. That'd be really awesome. And I definitely have a plan to interview Richard Hart someday. I want to really get a lot of great questions down, things that he's never been asked before. So that'll be fun sometime. So what I want to start with real quick is just a little bit of reading from SciVive, because I feel like that's important. I don't do it every single episode, but I think it is important to continuously be reading from SciVive. I am currently, now that I've finished 15 Ways to Fix the World, I am editing SciVive, and I will be rereading it. I'll be recording the audio once again, and this time I'm hoping to have it in such a format that it'll be available on Audible and Spotify. But that's a lot of work. So I just started. I finished the intro. I'm about halfway through Mind, which is the first chapter. But and it's going along great. I'm really excited about it because now that I've done one book and I have a kind of a better understanding of how, what Richard's view is and what his vision is for everything, I feel a lot more confident moving forward with editing SciVive. So it's going to be great, y'all. I'm super excited about that. So let's get into it. I'm going to read this it's a couple paragraphs from the chapter on longevity, which is the 10th chapter of SciVive. And really, I'm going to bring it back to my personal experience real quick. For me, this is the beginning of my longevity journey. And it's really beautiful how synchronistic having this stream is with what's going on in my life right now. I've come to a point where I have just recently restarted, right? I am going through a growth and a regeneration in life. And I am at a place where the world is kind of my oyster again. And things that I didn't think I might be interested in or doing are now back on the table. And a lot of that, and I'm not going to go into too much detail at this point, but a lot of that is because I am a little older than most of you probably think I am. I am now very interested in longevity. I really want to know how to extend my life and the lives of those that I love and the lives of those that mean a lot to me. So it's a little somber, this whole subject, right? Because really what we're dealing with is death and defeating death and trying to extend our lifespan. So this is from longevity. It's the middle of the chapter, and the heading is Visualize How Important Every Day Is and How Few You Have. So I'm going to start with reading this real quick. Give me a moment to get some water. My voice feels scratchy. All right. So it says, imagine a situation where one's grandparents have all passed away. It's not awesome. If one wanted to call one's grandpa right now, he's dead. Can't call him. He was a nice guy, smart guy, but gone forever. Now imagine that you could have done something to prevent it. Would you ask yourself, did I do anything to help him at all? A single thing? No. Watched him die. Okay, could I have done something? Yeah, probably could have done something. Well, do you want to maybe do something before your dad dies? Would that work for you? Or how about yourself? Would you do it for yourself? When does a person really die? The dream of being able to capture your own destiny and use science and progress to capture your own personal power and well being, it just dies with a whimper. That's incredibly sad, common, and usual, and a tragedy. How many people are sitting in old folks' homes right now that no one cares about? That is also a tragedy of immense proportions. There was a time when those people had meaning. There was a time when those people had opportunity, power, vibrancy, life, and attractiveness. When do they really die? Is it when their heart stops? The brain stops? Or when they stop caring? Or do they die when we stop caring? And I wanted to read that. I know that was like, we're getting real serious real quick here, but this is a serious topic for sure. And I very much resonate with what Richard says there. My grandfather has passed away, both my grandfathers. I think I have, hold on. I have one living grandparent. I have one living grandparent left. And my dad, my dad that raised me, for those of you that know a little bit about my story, I was adopted. So I try to identify adopted versus birth family because I know everybody. So my adoptive father, he was very sick this last winter. He got COVID, and he was the COVID patient, right? Diabetes, overweight, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. For all intents and purposes, he should not have made it, but he did. I'm very grateful for that. But I went through watching him almost die, basically. And that was one of the hardest things I've had to deal with so far in my life. And it really jars you, right? It wakes you up to understanding that there is that life is precious. Hold on one second, y'all. I just realized I haven't sent the link to my guest. That's probably a good thing to do. Let me find the link. Invite. There we go. Thanks for your patience, y'all. I'm going to say what's up to chat in just a second here, too. Okay. All right, Brent, in case you're watching, I just sent it to you in Telegram. All right, so let's say what's up. I saw Balliet Brand comment earlier. I don't know if he's here or not, but thanks for supporting Balliet. Always super appreciate you. Brent says, looking forward to this. Infinite Siren, inviting freedom. Crypto military vet. Crypto Artie, what's up? My online ghost. Dougie Peach, good to see you. Hexbala, Jackie, John J in the UK. Oh, let's put this up there. Let's see. Where's that? Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong thing. I'm on the wrong thing. Man, I really feel like I haven't streamed in a minute. I'm getting used to this again. So John J says, you died twice, SJ. Once when you draw your last breath, and finally when your name is spoken for the very last time. Ooh, chills, man. That's intense. I get that. I wonder, John Jay, with the way social media is now, right? And the way that we have kind of now these time capsules of ourselves online, like what does that mean for all of that, right? Are we going to end up being some kind of artificially intelligent cosmic who's he what's it? It's, you know what I mean? Like in theory, we would not have our names said for the last time if this content is out there still, right? If we're still floating around on the internet somewhere, do we ever die? If that second death that you're talking about. So that's a very very intense thought. I like that a lot. Thomas Turner, good to see you. Hexforce One, welcome in. Samantha Kelly, hey girl, good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, guys. So I just, yeah, I just wanted to, um, I'm killing time now. I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk for 10 minutes, like don't worry, no rush. And now I'm just like, oh, what am I talking about? So I guess, yeah, let me introduce our guest a little bit more. I have a bunch of information in the description, so definitely go check that out. I'm interested to find out what Brent's been up to because he's got his own YouTube channel. He has a website called he is the CEO of longevityplan.com. And he on that site you can see that he's worked with Aubrey de Grey, super cool. He's definitely had conversations with Richard about all this in the past, which is again super awesome. And I am really looking forward to finding out how he got started in this, right? And I'm curious, y'all, who, especially the ones that are watching right now, right? We're SciVivers, right? A lot of you watch this content because you know about SciVive, you know about Richard Hart, you understand the longevity discussion. So I guess I want to try this thing that that people do. Let's see, what could I put? Uh I want to think of what you know how Jimrat does the biceps in the chat and like Crypto 7 does sevens in the chat. I want to come up with something neat. How about this? Can you guys give me those in the chats? Give me hearts in the chat. Like that heart. That's my favorite heart. Put some hearts in the chat. If you have already begun studying longevity, if you already know a little bit about what it means to you, and or not know what it means to you, but what longevity is about and what the study means, I would love to know about that. So I'm definitely new to this whole discussion of longevity. Really all I know is what I have learned from watching just very limited content from Aubrey de Grey, from the Hex conference, from Maddie Allen's streams as well. So thank you, Maddie Allen, for having a platform and having the space to often host Aubrey. I really love that Maddie Allen is following up with his with what's going on with Sense Foundation and what Aubrey's up to. I think that means a lot to this community. I think it's great for us to continue on that path to learning about, how can we stay around, right? How are we going to be around for our 5555 stakes? And how are we going to, if we can at this point, what is it that we can do right now? And that's another question I'm going to ask Brent. I'm super excited about. What is it we can do today? What can we do right now to continue our life, to expand and extend our lifespan? And it's so intriguing to me because I didn't know about any of this before Hex. I had no clue about longevity, SciVive, of course, none of that. And it really just is, it's exciting because I already am the kind of person to take care of myself. For those of you that don't know, years ago, I went from working at a desk job 9 to 5 to working on a farm all day long. And that changed my life completely. That totally turned my life around. I lost 60 pounds. I started eating right. I started drinking water. I stopped eating processed food, fast food, anything that comes in a pack. I mean, I still will dabble in that kind of stuff, but whole foods, right? Just clean eating. And to understand now and to know that there is a lot more that I am able to do that's not just diet and exercise that can help extend our lifespans. So let's see. Oh, let's read. And I'm going to ask if you did put a heart in the chat, and that's something that y'all, I love this. That's totally my thing now. Heart in the chat. I'm about it. Sweet. So if you have started your longevity journey already, if you feel so compelled to, while we're waiting for Brent to come on, share one or two things that you do daily or that you have done in the past. Maybe it's not a daily thing. I very briefly, I watched a couple of Brent's videos and I scanned a lot of his stuff. And there are like injections you can get of things. Has anyone done that yet? Is there a supplement that you're taking daily that's supposed to help with this? Fasting. Is anyone here fasting, or have you fasted before in the past? That's something that I just did. I'm also excited to talk about that a little bit. I had one question when I posted on the Twitter about if anybody had a question to ask him, they brought up the master cleanse. Now, I did the master cleanse once right before I kind of made that transition from working in an office to working on the farm. And it was crazy. It was really interesting to see the way that my body responded to not having any food and doing this kind of flushing. And at the time, I'm sure I'm actually interested. I want to know if that's something that's still recommended, and B, I'd be interested if it is. I'd be very interested to find out how my body responds this time around, because that time I was still eating junk, so my body was definitely cleansing a lot of crap, right? So let's see. So I'm going to go through some of these comments here. Jackie, what is up? Jackie is 75 years old and it's your main interest. Okay, intermittent fasting, 18-6, lift weight, and follow lots of longevity experts. Hope to live forever. Jackie, I'd love to hear about more longevity experts. Who else do you follow? Definitely put that in the comments. Let us know. Share their Twitter handles or their YouTube channels. I would love to do that. I think if you share it, I can reshare it and then it'll be a link. So we can try that. But that's awesome, Jackie. Thanks for tuning in. I'm super glad that you're here. And in fact, I think it would be awesome to have you on a stream sometime because, it sounds like you're doing it, right? You're working for longevity and that's awesome. I also do intermittent fasting. I'm changing it up right now. I was doing close to 18-6, but I just started shortening my window a little bit. So I'm at like 24, which is working for me. It's weird, but it works. I think maybe because I just did an 88-hour fast, my stomach is kind of all right with it and it's used to having less time with food in it. So yeah, love intermittent fasting. Love Bit Vanessa says, proud of you, Jackie. Way to go. How Not to Die, best book. We Optimize. I'd love to know who the author is. If you want to share a little bit more about that. Very interested on that. Let's see. Beans, greens, berry seeds daily. Interesting. Fasting daily. Exercise daily. That's what I'm talking about, Bit Vanessa. Exactly. Cleanse daily. Awesome. Sweet. Well, hey, without further ado, guess what? Our guest is here. Hello. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you, I don't know if you had a chance were you watching it all?
I unfortunately was not. My newborn just woke up and toddler just woke up at the same time. So got him in the car seat off to the in-laws, which is really great.
Gotcha.
5 minutes away. So I just hopped on.
Nice. Yeah, no big deal. I was just talked a little bit about you and what you are doing and what you've done, and went over a little bit about, we were just talking about fasting. I was asking the chat who here has already started to study longevity. We've got this really awesome woman named Jackie. She says she's 75 and she does intermittent fasting. She lifts weights and she follows a lot of longevity experts. So I was asking her to share as well about more experts, because honestly, this is a very new subject to me. Despite having been in the Hex ecosystem for a little over a year and reading SciVive, I haven't really studied longevity, and I'm really excited to learn more because I was just saying I consider myself a very healthy person. I do intermittent fasting. I eat very clean. I don't work out as much as I feel like I should, especially because I want to be stronger. I do yoga. I've just started doing Tai Chi, which I really like. So I think that's more like kind of a mental and emotional, right, exercise. But I definitely know that as I'm getting older, I want to ensure that I have that strength still. So I'm so curious. I have all these questions. Well, why don't we first, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Because I mean, I was telling the chat, I very recently learned about you and what you're doing. Like, I mean, I've seen you in SciVive Telegram a bunch, but I did not even realize the, capacity that you exist in here in terms of longevity. So please, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. It's a big world, almost 8 billion Homo sapiens now, so they say. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. My name's Brent Nally, and I've been a big fan of Richard Hart and SciVive and everything that he's done, Pulse and Hex and other things. I actually found him in 2017 on his YouTube channel, just doing live streams shortly after he started. I was fortunate enough to get into crypto relatively early. I wish I would have gotten in earlier like everybody else. I tried to buy Bitcoin in like 2011. There was no Coinbase. I literally tried for a while, and I'm a relatively intelligent early internet adapter. I just couldn't figure it out. There was not even Mt. Gox back then. So in any event, I consider myself a curious person. In 2005, my dad's mom was really sick from many chronic diseases, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. She was smoking since she was 13. She had Parkinson's. She had emphysema. They had her on 8 different pharmaceutical medications, and she was hallucinating at some point, just kind of like, Brent, there's a man out there with a ski mask on robbing that person in the car. And I look out in my family's cul-de-sac in Anytown, Louisville, Kentucky. And of course there was nothing there. And then she thought her husband that died in 1994 was at the doorbell when this was like 2005. So that just got me questioning, like, hey, is this normal? Like, and what I've found out from researching is that this actually isn't normal. This is a relatively new thing in humanity where we're keeping people alive longer with all these Franken drugs, pharmaceutical drugs and stuff, which are great to a certain extent, but we're not really increasing health span, and we haven't increased maximum lifespan, which is believed to be about 122 years of age. And so I want to make sure I define all these terms. I know this is more of a probably, it's SciVive and you, but Hex, I want to make sure I define the terms. So maximum lifespan just means what's believed to be, with the best evidence available, the longest that an organism can live. And so for Homo sapiens, humans, us, it's believed to be about 122 right now. But then there's huge debate in the geeky longevity geroscience community about how long can humans actually live. And I'll give you a quick spoiler. I don't personally think there's a limit. And there's really smart people like David Sinclair. I got a lot of books that I've read behind me. Lifespan is the one right there. Hopefully you can see it. That's written by David Sinclair, published in 2019. He's got another book coming out maybe next year or the year after. And he agrees, and many other smart people. But because it's academia, they're very, very reluctant to go out on a limb and say stuff like that because they're trying to get government money, grants a lot for their research. So they try to be more conservative. But I've been following the science since about 2005, and I've seen that really shift quite a bit by the leaders, which is a really good sign. So I can go on and on. I want to say one more thing. It's actually not that big of a deal that you don't, work out a lot. The longest lived humans are called super centenarians, meaning they've lived over 110 years. First of all, they're almost all women, so you're already doing great there. And they actually just had, none of them are like ultra exercisers, marathon runners, that will get you pretty far, but you're going to need really good genes to get to like super centenarian level. And so working out is great. I highly recommend strength training. Is really, really important. There's a disease called sarcopenia that people get when they're older. We know what it looks like. Older folks in their 80s, 90s who are just really, really frail. They fall, they break a bone. It's really downhill from there because it's really hard for them to heal. So again, like I said, I can go on. I'll pause there. I can share more about myself if you or anybody in the chat has more questions.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's really what this stream is for sure. At least for me anyways, because like I said, I saw that you have you're the CEO of is it Longevity Plan? Is that right?
Yeah, folks can go to longevityplan.com and check it out if they'd like.
Yeah. So my first question for you is I guess no, I'm not sure if you answered that. Yeah. How did you start on your path to learning about longevity? Like, where did that begin? And yeah.
I kind of touched upon it with my grandmother in like 2005. So I'm born in 85. I'm an 85 model. I'm 37 right now. Chronologically, biologically, I've done some tests to see how old I am, and we can talk about that in a bit. Because that's a whole field that's like super interesting, but also like you really want to try and figure out like what's really going on there so you don't get swindled by, some salesperson or something, or just like misconstrue things. So I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. My dad was born in Kentucky, lived there his whole life, still does. My parents are still married. My dad's grew up Catholic, and he was more like Republican, and he was an attorney. He just retired a couple of years ago. He was like a corporate attorney. My mom, on the other hand, born in Manhattan, lived there till she was 6. Her father was a professor. They moved around all around the North. She was more socialist, more Democrat. She actually, I think, still kind of identifies with the Democrat Party, unfortunately, although I'd have to ask her on that. My dad is definitely independent now. My mom was Jewish, and she got her master's in social work. She met my dad in law school at University of Louisville, never expecting to like stay in Louisville. She just went there for grad school. Another like great lesson if anybody here is younger, like you have no idea how life is going to play out, like all the crazy things that can happen, the butterfly effect.
So true.
So the point here, if you're wondering, like, why the heck did I just say all that? So I was sitting here at the dinner table every night. My dad was over here to my right. My mom was to my left. And then I have an older brother, 2 years older than me, and a younger sister. They would sit across from me. The conversation at the dinner table would be like a ping pong match or something, because, you couldn't get any more opposite with the things that my parents, the way that I just described my parents, they're polar opposite on everything. And, I see relationships getting destroyed over politics and all things like that right now. But my parents are still happily married, and they've shown us that love can conquer all, and that you can agree and disagree, and that you can hear the other side of people's perspectives. So my dad would kind of be like, those people just need to get a job. And my mom would be like, well, what if they can't get a job, Height? Because my dad's name was Height, because if they had this or that. She worked with a lot of like really troubled children as a social worker and stuff. So my point is, with all that, I think I just really grew up like really keeping an open mind. And I like the saying, the mind's like a parachute, it has to be open to work, but also, you don't want your mind to be too open or your brains will fall out. So you want to just try and like seek the truth. I try to reason from first principles. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk and was before that was cool, I guess. I was lucky there. I was at a startup in Silicon Valley called 3PAR in 2010. And the exit that I took every day right there in Fremont, California, in the Bay Area, was right next to, Tesla's, their main manufacturing facility. So I just kind of lucked out by seeing it there, researching on the internet, and be like, oh shit. So I started investing in Tesla in 2012. Nice. And I love Tesla and stuff. In any event, that's a whole nother conversation. But there's about 3,000 car deaths every single day on the planet. So I'm not just about solving aging. It's about like relieving or getting rid of as much human suffering as possible. That's really what we should all try to do. What Richard Hart talks about is consciousness is the most rare and precious thing in the universe. And I completely agree with him. So if you look at it through that framework, then you should realize with every single thing, the abortion debate, everything, it's like we want to protect consciousness. We want to protect like intelligence. That's what we should really respect as a species, because that's what sets us apart from every other species. And when I use that word consciousness, it's a really, really vague word. And so I apologize. Our language isn't great. I'm very aware of that. What I mean is, of course, like human consciousness. That's what we should try and protect. Another sentient life. But, I'm on team human. I'm trying to protect humans and make us flourish and thrive as much as possible. So long-winded answer, but to give you the final point of this, I always from a very young age was just like very curious and like, why the heck are my grandparents old? Were they always like that? And I'm like, well, why do we age? And then I never really figured it out, but it was really the internet. And when my grandmother was falling apart, that I really dug in. I read a book called Singularity is Near, which is right there. Ray Kurzweil, read a few of his books. I'm not like in the Ray Kurzweil, like religion, like some people are. I respect him. I interviewed him in like 2011. He's great, but he's been wrong on some stuff. And I don't believe we should just sit back and let the singularity happen. We need to work to make it happen. And I started watching Aubrey de Grey lectures and stuff on YouTube very early on, like 2009. I read his book, Ending Aging. Aubrey's on our scientific advisory board for Longevity Plan. He's phenomenal. I've been fortunate enough to interview him a couple of times and meet him many more. Richard, for those that don't know, was actually volunteering for Aubrey's charity called the Methuselah Foundation, which Aubrey co-founded in 2003. Richard was volunteering for that back in like 2007, 8. You can find a video of Richard on YouTube. It's a different last name. For those that don't know, Hart isn't his last name. I'm not going to say his last name. I don't think he wants people knowing that really. But my point, the reason why I say that is Richard is an OG with this longevity stuff. He's been researching this stuff very deeply for a very long time. He cares about it. This making money stuff is all just about really, the important stuff, longevity. I saw him raise the $27 million approximately for SENS Research Foundation, which is Aubrey de Grey's charity that he co-founded in 2009. Unfortunately, there's some drama going on there. Unfortunately, we don't have to get into that unless people want to. But my point is that Richard's been researching this stuff for a long time. He knows his stuff. He hasn't been able to keep up with the longevity science the last few years because he's been so dedicated to crypto. But he knows the main big stuff, and it's really impressive to hear him. And I've been fortunate enough to interview Richard once on his Richard Hart YouTube channel in late 2019, and then on my longevity YouTube channel in 2020. So that was a long-winded answer. I'm going to shut up now.
that's you're the guest here, so that's that's what we're looking for, is your answers for sure. So okay. The next thing I want to talk about kind of quickly, but is, let's say someone just, there are people that may watch this that have never heard about longevity, that don't know what all that means. They're like, oh, SciVive, Richard Hart, Hex, no. One thing that I want to touch on is, what are some things that people can do that might be very simple or easy to implement on a day-to-day basis that are going to help with your longevity?
Okay, so it's a great question. I want to say something real quick before I answer that. It'll be super brief. One thing that Richard's been very adamant about from what he's learned over the many years that I just described of him being, focused on longevity, is that the framing matters for how we talk about this publicly and try and get more people to understand it and buy in. So when we talk about longevity, a lot of people get really upset, like, well, that's just for the rich, or rich people are going to live longer, and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, whatever. Really, all this is about is staying as healthy as possible. So that's what I want people's focus to be. Like, we want to focus on the long term, but don't get too caught up in the long term where you get overwhelmed. Just focus on today, breathe, and focus on, that's the focus, staying as healthy as possible. And then the side effect of that is, if you're staying as healthy as possible, you're raising your probability of just living longer. But I'm actually not about just longevity for the sake of longevity. My wife's grandmother just died. She would have been 98 in August. She just died at 97 about 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now. And her quality of life was pretty poor the last few years. And she was in hospice last month. I mean, it was miserable for her. We felt so bad for her, but it was also a lot of strain on our extended family. And so I'm about extending healthy lifespan. That's a really key thing. So about extending health span and lifespan. So if you don't know that term, health span, is exactly what it probably sounds like. It's increasing the time that your quality of life is very good when you're basically as biologically young as possible. So there's another term that's more scientific called QALY. It's an acronym, QALY. It stands for quality adjusted life years. So that's the same thing as health span. So in any event, I wanted to make sure I got that stated up front. And what Richard says is that he helped raise $27 million last year for SINS, for medical research. And I really like that terminology, because it's kind of like getting away from longevity that a lot of people mistakenly think is bad. But really the point is that if we're studying the science of aging and trying to figure out ways to slow, stop, and reverse it, not only is this way more upstream than all these chronic aging-related diseases that are killing us, like heart disease, that's the #1 killer, and cancer, that's the #2 killer on the planet, and then many other age-related diseases. COVID would be one of them. I saw this data in January 2020, and a lot of people say there's no way you could have known this, but I figured it out in about 10 minutes that aging was the foremost risk factor for morbidity and mortality of COVID-19. I mean, it was already in the data from what we had in China right there. I looked at it and I was like, this is a joke. This is just another aging related disease. This isn't a big deal. It's basically the flu or something like that. Yep. But you say things like that on the internet at the time, you're just canceled, right? We saw all the big tech censoring stuff like that. So I kind of kept my mouth shut so I didn't get canceled, to be honest. In any event, the point that I'm trying to make here is that we got to get people educated. That's the key. And communication is very key for that. My degree is from University of Kentucky in 2007 as a corporate communications is what I got my degree in. And so I really like what Richard talks about with this just being medical research, but we also don't want to confuse people. There's lots of different medical research. So I think that's to kind of get them to buy in. You're like, well, what are you researching? It's well, we're researching aging, and here's why, because not only could it potentially be, is it better because aging is more upstream? If we just solve aging, then heart disease, cancer, most cancers, there are some childhood cancers that are really sad, but most cancers, heart disease, we don't really see kids getting heart disease. That's an aging related disease. And many other diseases, like I mentioned earlier, sarcopenia, osteoarthritis, on and on and on and on and on. We all know them, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, blah, 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 blah. those would just go away if we truly solve aging. When I talk about solving aging, I'm not just talking about like people think biologically, and Elon Musk is clearly confused on this. I love Elon, but I've seen it over and over. He's like, we shouldn't like solve aging, or we shouldn't have longevity, because then old people are just going to stick around with their horrible ideas and stuff. Well, there's two parts of that. Number one, when I'm talking about solving aging, I'm talking about everything, every single cell in your body being reversed to about the 20s or something. And if you're wondering if like, oh, is it going to like reverse back to like prepubescent stuff, like that's actually like not possible to stay healthy. We can talk about cellular reprogramming and Yamanaka factors, OSPM and stuff like that. If you revert it all the way back to a basically pluripotent cell, then those cells they just get tumors, and it's horrible. It's a mess.
Wow.
But my point is, that's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about solving aging, I'm talking about getting you to basically be like you were in your 20s in every single way. And also with your brain, right? So when you're younger, we know that you have better just brain function, like period, in every single way. Neuroplasticity, which is basically the way that the brain is able to learn and regrow and grow new brain cells and make new connections and stuff like that. And we can see like Isaac Newton discovered or invented, whatever you want to call it with your language semantics, calculus when he was 22. Most mathematicians that discover big new things in math or break certain math problems that were thought to be unbreakable or just nobody broke them, most of them do that by the time they're 29. This has to do with brain aging, basically, because you should be gaining more and more knowledge, getting wiser, smarter in many ways, and you do in many ways. But there's some parts of the brain where it's like that taps out. So when I'm talking about solving aging, I'm talking about solving that too. So we shouldn't have this problem that like Elon and other really smart people are worried about, of like these old people sticking around forever with their old ideas and stuff. So that's really important. I know I didn't answer your question about things to do. We can get to that, and I can make that brief depending on time. But I wanted to kind of get those things up front so that people can understand like these things have been thought about for a very long time by very smart people. And I can share resources for people if in the chat or in SciVive afterwards, if they want to kind of look into some of these ideas I touched upon further.
Yeah, excellent. And that it's interesting to me that the way that Elon talks about it is so opposite from what I've read from Richard, because he talks about how awesome it would be for the people who are brilliant to be around longer, right? So
that's what's so crazy about this, right?
Yeah, that is a trip. I'm going to read a couple comments real quick I had saved back here. Let me see. So this is from Crypto Artie, and this kind of like is a follow-up to the question I just asked. So he says, outside of what Jack Levin recommended, Alpha Brain, Theacrine, MCT oil, any other supplements recommended? Already big on apple cider, which I love apple cider. I know about MCT oil. I haven't been taking it. And I guess that's part of the questioning for me is supplements. That's something that I've kind of gone back and forth with over the years. I've taken them, I've stopped taking them, I've taken them. And, so because I don't see I haven't seen the benefits, but maybe they're not to be seen. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just something that's happening internal that I don't really know that's going on, but it's good to have. So I'd love to know about supplements for sure. So we can start with that one.
Okay, definitely. And I assume Crypto already means apple cider vinegar here.
Yeah.
Apple cider is something
ACV.
different, which is delicious. But okay, so supplements is a crazy thing. I don't know how deep we want to go into it. So let me just give a high level in like under 60 seconds. So I'm 37, as I mentioned. I've been on a journey in my life, like everybody's been on their own personal journey. And what I would say right now is that supplements should be something that is very specific for each person. So there's no single person on the planet that should be taking exactly the same supplements as like somebody else, with maybe some very rare exceptions, like, identical twins that are like, in the exact same environment. So personalized medicine and personalized everything is what I want to be the key takeaway here for this. Personalized nutrition, personalized lifestyle, everything. So that's why you shouldn't have people shouldn't be taking the exact same supplements in the exact same amount. So for example, like I take creatine. I took a test called Prodrome Scan in April of last year, and it recommended that I take a little bit more creatine. But I'm also working out a lot more now too. You would want to change the amount of creatine you're making based off how much weight training or just lifting weights that you're doing, for example. When it comes to like the stuff that we believe is like great for everybody, as far as supplements go, that is pretty well generally agreed upon in like the geroscience community, and I'd say just the overall just health community. I'd say omega-3s, but what product are you buying? How much are you taking?
Right.
Like this stuff is a rabbit hole. That's why I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, because it's such a rabbit hole of a conversation. Omega-3s, MCT oil, I think, to my knowledge, was like really popularized by this guy, Dave Asprey, who's kind of like the father of biohacking. I saw him on a Joe Rogan podcast in like 2012. So I was kind of an early adapter to him, and we were like friends on Facebook back then. I'm sure he knows who I am, but we don't communicate anymore. In any event, he really popularized that. I don't see any evidence that it's going to be great for lifespan and extending maximal lifespan. But the problem with all of this as well is that there's not enough big human clinical trials done on like most of this stuff. So I haven't seen anything, any big randomized controlled double-blind placebo controlled studies on like MCT oil, for example. I took it for a while. I didn't really see any benefits, but another thing I want to get to is like, how do you measure things? It's really hard, especially if you're taking a lot of stuff over the years and switched up things like I have. It's really hard to know. So this is a big problem that we're just going to take years to play out. One of the things I suggest, if you really are curious and want to know, is first, the most obvious thing, pay attention to your body. Listen to your body, use your intuition, think deeply about this. Don't get rigid and set in one thing and thinking it's the best thing ever. Follow the science, follow people on social media that you think are credible, and unfollow them if they lose their credibility. But use that as a guide to like figure out what works for you and listen to your body. And if you've changed up your lifestyle, maybe think about changing up supplementation as well, as I mentioned, like with my creatine story, for example. And then the second thing that I'd say is that we just don't know a lot of this stuff, because a lot of these things either haven't been around that long as far as being studied and mainstream and studied well, with long enough, big enough clinical human trials. And then also the things that have are like just kind of the low hanging fruit that I would recommend. So that would be like vitamin D3. I take 6,000 international units every day. Obviously nothing beats sunlight, but I still supplement with vitamin D3 every day. And I have been for over a decade. With COVID, if you're worried about that at all, then like definitely take vitamin D3. There's robust, really good studies showing that it's really good for preventing and mitigating the harmful effects of COVID. Vitamin C, I'd say just get it from your diet. Same thing with like most vitamins, but vitamin D3 is one that I think is worth supplementing. And the great thing about this is vitamin D3 is like super cheap and it's super available. Again, you want to try and find the things that's been around for a very long time, very safe and very cheap. And so those are things like the vitamins that we know of. But I don't necessarily recommend a multivitamin. There's actually pretty good evidence that taking some of these cheap brands of like multivitamins are not necessarily good for you. So I recommend, just getting it from your diet in general. I take this stuff called NMN. It's called nicotinamide mononucleotide. I can share a link to a video that I did about it last year. Quick little 5 or 6 minute video. I hosted a show called Lifespan News in partnership with a great charity, 501c3 charity called Lifespan.io. So if you're not aware about NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, you could watch that video. I'll share it in SciVive or try and put it in the chat here when I get a break from rambling. And it's NMN is a NAD plus precursor. So NAD plus is basically, it's a molecule that's like super important. If you lost this molecule, from your body, you'd be dead in like 30 seconds. So it's
Wow.
it's a very complex but very important molecule. I can share info on this too if people are more curious about that. But basically, NAD plus is believed to not be able to get through the cellular wall, which is why you can't just take a pill, which is why you take an NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide precursor that turns in, your body converts it to NAD plus. There's other precursors to NAD plus like NR, nicotinamide riboside, and there's huge nerd battles in the geroscience and the vitamin world of like which one's better, and that stuff is a trip. Seeing these PhDs just argue online about this stuff. The Twitter geroscience battles are real, just like crypto. So And if you're looking for the best companies to buy them from, in my opinion, I'm not going to make any money off of this. I've done a lot of research on it, but this company, DoNotAge.org, they're a UK-based company. They have the cheapest NMM that I've found, and I've actually seen third-party testing from them and from other people that have like verified this, like Dr. Brad Stanfield. He's a YouTuber with over 100,000 subs. That's a medical doctor out of New Zealand who's focusing on healthy longevity, who's kind of reported on this. So I do believe that the NMM from Do Not Age is legitimate. Obviously, they're sourcing this stuff from China, like pretty much everybody else, and you could get a bad batch. Anything's possible. Don't shoot the messenger. But if you want to get NMM, I think Do Not Age is great. Obviously, if you buy in bulk, you can get it at a better price. I take about 1 gram a day. I take it in the morning when I break my fast. You definitely want to take it in the morning if you do it, because you actually NAD levels rise and fall throughout the day. So they're lower in the morning is when you want them to raise, and you actually want your NAD levels to be down lower when you sleep. So I will answer your question. I think sleep is the most important thing. We'll get into that in a bit, but sorry, I said I took way too long on this. The supplement stuff is a rabbit hole. I'm just going to shut up here now.
No worries. I'm going to read a couple other comments and then like piggyback, because it's a couple people had some follow-up supplement questions. So I'm just going to read this. A couple from Bit Finesse says, be harder to kill. Health is lame, dumb topic for some reason. We're talking about being alive, staying alive, and not just dying all over the place. Being harder to kill matters, man. And then
I think being harder to kill does matter. Like, that's why
yeah.
I train. I played 3 hours of basketball this morning. I went into the sauna at 195 degrees at my gym afterwards for 24 minutes. Ooh. I always try to get to 20 minutes. I came home and ate like a fiend after that. Like, you want to be anti-fragile. You want to be harder to kill, like, no doubt. But, you know, I'm a data-driven person. And if you look at the data, I mean, I'm in California. The biggest risk factors to me are aging by far. That's what's going to overwhelmingly kill me, but not now. So I'm trying to do things to stop that from happening or slow it down at least. And like I said, like car wrecks, I try to be super careful when I'm driving, and having a Tesla is important because they're the safest cars on the road by far. And they're just getting safer and safer and safer. They actually have new software with their 8 cameras outside the Tesla that can 100% predict when an accident will happen and deploy the airbag before the actual accident even occurs in milliseconds. So that's where this is going. Like, so if you want to like be hard to kill, you want to be doing these type of things. I mean, it's cool to be a big, strong dude and stuff, but like, I would not recommend getting in like bar fights and stuff like that, or going out like
for sure
for fights. So.
Yeah. And that kind of goes with this comment too. Life is still about risk management. Observe, extrapolate, plan, execute, evaluate, buy hex, repeat.
100%.
Love that. And then this touches on a personal thing for me too, Bit Finesse. He says, when I was 27, I was scheduled for a double knee replacement and a double carpal tunnel wrist surgery. Nuts. I'm fine today and ignored everyone. Diet matters. I'm not letting some dude cut me open. When I was much even younger than that, I was like 18 years old. And at the time I was overweight. I mean, I was probably over 200 pounds, like 19. Yeah. Wow. 19, 20. Yeah. I think my highest was like 215 ish at one point. And I remember going through something very similar. I'd been working at In-N-Out. That was my first job ever. And from lifting these, great burgers. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good stuff. From lifting those potato buckets and stuff, I think I had, injured my back. And I went through the same thing. I was sitting in a surgeon's office at the USC like surgical center, talking to some doctor about like fusing my bones together. And I am so glad that I decided, or, my mother and I decided to like not go that route, because lo and behold, it took me years, of course, like it took years to get to where I was at that time weight wise. It took me years to take it all off. But once I did, no problems. I feel so much better. I mean, now it's interesting because now I'll notice if I do start to gain weight, I do see that my back does hurt a little bit, right? And then I do see that it's starting to wear out a little bit or whatever. But that has a whole lot to do with my diet and my exercise and what I'm going through. So yeah, absolutely.
100%. I want to say something on that really quick. So first of all, Bit Finesse, hats off to you. I'm glad that you chose to do what you did and that you're, living your best life right now because you did that. I said heart disease is number one killer. Number two is cancer. Number three is actually like not normally seen on this list, but it's actually, you can verify this. I can send people info if they want to see. It's actually just like basically medical malpractice or medical ignorance or just the medical system, period. Like your doctor or your healthcare practitioner basically killing you. So like nobody, just everybody remember this. If there's one thing you remember, like nobody cares about you more than you. At least they shouldn't. Like if somebody else cares about you more than you, then like you need to do some self-help type stuff. You know what I mean? Like you should love yourself. You should take care of yourself. Like when you ride on an airplane, they say, you know, put that oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on your neighbor. So to me, what that just means in life is like, you got to take care of yourself to a certain extent before you can worry about taking care of others. And so you just really need to trust yourself. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, listen to your body. And if a doctor is saying something that sounds like crazy or just at your instinctual level makes you like take a breath, then definitely at the very least get a second opinion. Harvard did a study, I think it was Harvard Medical School, that came out, I believe in like 2019, that showed that over 50% of all of the information that doctors were taught in medical school is shown to be wrong within, I believe, 18 months or 2 years. So whatever it is, let's call it 2 years. That's a huge, right? Look at your face. Like that's a huge thing. So, and this is in 2022. So I think this is happening for two reasons. Number one, they've been teaching so much propaganda for such a long time that's pumped out through the, you know, pharmaceutical industry, you know, machine, right? Which people are becoming more aware of, right? Always follow the money, just basic things you should be taught as a child. And then the other aspect of it is, I think, with the internet and just our global communication stuff, we're just kind of figuring things out better. They're like, in other words, that's a really good thing. Science is getting better. Whatever it is, this is a really good thing, but it's pretty shocking to most people. So if you have a doctor who's, let's say, like a boomer or something in their 60s or 70s right now, and they don't have a growth mindset and they haven't been keeping up with the research and doing continuing medical education, you got a dangerous potential, you know, person to listen to right there. So just be very careful with who you choose to, you know, make healthcare decisions for you. And ultimately, like, you should be the final decision maker. So many people have the wrong mindset about this. They're like, well, my doctor told me to do this. Like, who cares? This person's like a stranger and they're not you. Like, your doctor should be suggesting things and you are the final decision maker on everything. So that's the way I interpret it. I don't have like a personal doctor or medical practitioner. I take complete control of my health and I take responsibility for all the decisions that I make, good or bad.
That's awesome. That's, yeah. Wow. Super important, you know, for people to think about. I remember, you know, just growing up, and so many people are in this, you know, they kind of just live in this world where they go to their doctor and they listen to their doctor and what their doctor says. And, you know, just like you're saying, that doctor, in fact, I was just reading in SciVive, they Google half the shit. Like you know, they go and Google your symptoms so they can figure out what to do with you. Like, you know, things you could do on your own.
Yeah, and I'll say real quick, for like these very rare diseases, there's a show that was on Netflix a couple of years ago. My wife and I watched it. It was called Diagnosis, I believe. And it was like these very rare diseases that these people had. And all the healthcare practitioners they went to, they basically just thought they were crazy or they just couldn't figure it out. Getting the diagnosis is incredibly important if you're having problems. So getting the proper diagnosis is so important. And when you have a rare condition, that can be very hard to do because the doctor's never even heard of it. So the point that I want to make here now after that, very briefly, is that if you do have a rare condition and you do figure that out, be empowered and realize that you could become like the world's expert on this condition. And I don't really use Facebook anymore, except for to like wish family members a happy birthday and stuff. But one thing that I think is still really good about Facebook is the groups. So like if you can get into a group, whether it be on Facebook or Telegram or whatever, on like a very rare condition, other people that have that, listening to their stories and what they've gone through can be a really great way to not make the mistakes they made and have a community of people to figure out like the solution to your very rare disease. So those are my thoughts on that.
So I've got like two to three kind of follow-up supplement questions. Chris Side Effects wants to know your thoughts on cod liver oil.
I mean, I've heard about it a lot from people. I don't think that there's any evidence that that's something that you should like put at the top of your supplement stack, for example. But if you do it and you like it, it makes you feel good and you're happy with like the source where you're getting it, then that's all good. I would just say with any type of fish-based product, make sure that you're testing your heavy metal levels regularly, getting blood work, and specifically, mercury here is what you're going to be worried about.
And then Jackie asks your thoughts on David Sinclair's recommended supplements.
Yeah, I mentioned that I read his book behind me. I've watched, hundreds of hours of his YouTube, interviews and stuff. He's got his own podcast now over the years. I've watched him. His podcast is great. I like David a lot. I take metformin. I take 500 milligrams of that most days. I get it in Mexico where you can get it over the counter for cheap. You don't have to pay the ridiculous prices if you're an American, or in other countries where you need a prescription for it and they upcharge you like crazy. If you are in America and you don't have a way to get it in another country where it's just over the counter, there's a company called Ageless RX, just spelled the way you would think, AGELESSRX.com, where they will sell you metformin over the internet with like a brief little questionnaire that you do because it is a prescription based. And like, I don't want to say most, but in lots of countries, like Russia, Thailand, it's just over the counter pharmacy metformin.
Nice.
It's actually a drug that's prescribed for people who are pre-diabetic and diabetic.
My dad takes it.
Yeah, my dad takes it as well too. However, it's a very interesting backstory about where it came about. It was actually discovered in 1922, and in 1940s and 50s in Europe, it was being used for other reasons. I believe it was like antiviral. And it's a the way that it works, and we don't know fully exactly how like it works. There needs to be more studies, but it basically improves your mitochondria, which is like the powerhouse of your cells, and getting ATP, which is how we have our energy. So in any event, my point is that I think it's a very interesting drug that has been studied for a very long time. I think it's very safe. It's very cheap if used at the proper dosage. And it could potentially have good health benefits. But like I said earlier, like they've actually done studies on this, and there is actually no robust human clinical trials that are the gold standard of clinical trials that have shown any healthy life extension for metformin takers in general population. But what's really interesting is that people who were pre-diabetic or diabetic who started taking metformin have actually lived longer than other people who don't have diabetes and didn't take metformin. So I find that to be very interesting. We just need way more research and awareness for all sorts of things like this to get to the bottom of some of these conundrums.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Before you came up here, I was talking about my dad who takes metformin. I was talking about how he went through COVID and he should not have made it. Love that man, but he has diabetes, he has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, he was overweight, like all the things, like all the things were checked. And, thankfully he did make it. And I'm wondering, I wonder if metformin, played a role in that, because he's been taking it for quite some time now. So that's, definitely would be interested to find out too. Like, I mean, what a study that would be to find out, people who, like my father, went through COVID and like, because maybe they were on metformin, like did all right. So.
Right. I didn't fully answer your question. I believe it's page 304 in the book right behind me, Lifespan, where David Sinclair lays out his supplement stack, at least when the book was published in 2019. I think it was vitamin K2. I take that little mini aspirin, I think like 83 milligrams or something. I take that every day like he does. And then he also takes resveratrol. I actually take a product called Novos Core and Novos Boost. Novos Boost is just pure NMN. I got a pretty good discount on it because I took it as an early customer and knew the founders. But Novos Core is their main product, which is 11 different ingredients that are all nutraceuticals, over the counter. You just buy the stuff online. You don't need a prescription. And these 11 supplements are all trying to target the 9 hallmarks of aging, which we haven't even talked about, 9 hallmarks of aging. So one of those ingredients in Novos Core is called cerulcysteine. It starts as like PT, so it's spelled weird for how it's pronounced, but it's very, very, very similar molecule to resveratrol. And I'm not convinced that either are actually beneficial for healthy lifespan for humans. I hope that they are, but I'm not convinced of that. But I'm taking it because I believe in like that product in general, with like the other stuff that's in it and the value proposition for me to taking it at the time. So hopefully that was a full answer to this David Sinclair recommended supplements question.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to read these not in order. Crypto Artie is asking, oh yeah, and you did kind of touch on this on one of the supplements that you take, but yeah, are we supposed to, some things at night, some things during the day? Does it vary on,
To my knowledge,
yeah,
to my knowledge, most stuff doesn't matter. Anything that is like, so with NMM specifically, you definitely want to take that in the morning. A lot of people ask me that. Again, I go back to, at least to my knowledge, I don't think we have enough studies on that stuff. I'm not a believer in taking melatonin. So a lot of people don't realize this, but actually serotonin is converted into melatonin every night. And you need that to happen properly to get you to have that drive to sleep. And I think that melatonin might have other like potential healthy lifespan benefits, but I don't take melatonin regularly. Maybe if I travel, I'll pop it for like one night if I'm jet lagged. Yeah, I mean, I would just be wary of taking stuff like after 2:00, that could potentially disrupt sleep. So like, for example, caffeine, like I have a 2.5-year-old and a newborn that was just born 8 days ago. So with my life right now, as a parent of like 2 young children, I'm waking up like relatively early, also in my age group. So I don't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeine past like 2:00 in the afternoon. And because of the half-life of caffeine, you can get your full genome tested with various companies right now. There's various ones, but I had my 23andMe done, my wife and I, in 2013. And one of the things that I found interesting is it shows how you metabolize coffee. And so my wife metabolized, caffeine, not coffee. Sometimes I just like say that word, but I meant caffeine.
Right. Yeah.
So the 23andMe showed how you metabolize caffeine. My wife metabolized it quicker, which is why I think she can drink more coffee than me. She loves it. I say I drink coffee because my wife drinks coffee. It's like she makes it every morning. It smells good. And so I drink it, not every morning. But in any event, caffeine would be a big one. So be wary of like any green tea or any type of teas or coffee that have caffeine in them, or read all your supplements or stuff. If you're taking a bunch of stuff, some of them, especially these type of supplements that have many things in them, being marketed as like the awesome this, awesome that, might have like caffeine in it. So just be wary of that. There's a great website that you can go to called The Power of When, I believe, or maybe it's just Power of When, WHEN. And it will tell you your chronotype. There's 4 different chronotypes. The guy who like created this website, his name is the sleep doctor, Michael Breus. Breus. I interviewed him on my personal Brent Nally channel a couple of years ago in 2020. He's been on like all the mainstream media, US, like Good Morning America type, stuff, Kelly and Regis and Kelly type things like that for years. He's a PhD sleep scientist, and he's written multiple books, and this is his website. And basically he talks about how there's 4 different chronotypes, and knowing yours tells you when to do everything, like not just when to go to sleep, but when to have sex, when to ask for a raise, all that type of stuff. And so about 40% of the population is what he calls bears. And our whole society is based off of bears. That's like the 9-to-5 work week, because bears want to wake up at like, 6 a.m. and go to bed at like 10 p.m., to get like their 8 hours or something. So I'm a bear. My wife and I are bears. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do the quiz. It's free. It takes like 2 minutes. I highly recommend people to do that. So to getting back to like, we need to, whenever this live stream ends, I'm not sure, but we need to answer that question about like the top things to do, I think. And the number one is sleep by far. And I can share resources with people. We're not going to be able to get it into it right now. If you watch my, the very end of my interview with Richard in late December 2019, we were talking about health and longevity for like 2 hours. And then I brought up like sleep towards the end. And Rich was like, all right, well, cool. We're like, we got like most of that done. I'm like, no, Richard, like we haven't even hit like the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg, for sure.
Sleep is so complex. We can go down the rabbit hole. It's super crazy, but I will recommend this book, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which is right there. He's got his own podcast now, but I first learned of him in early 2018 when he came on Joe Rogan's podcast. I have a sleep playlist that I put together on my own YouTube channel. And then not only have I put that together, but I have tons of resources in the description of those YouTube videos with like tons of his podcasts. It's a rabbit hole. It's great info. But basically, if you want to get great sleep, here's the top things to do. And by the way, how are we doing on time? Can I reel these off?
I was actually going to ask you that. I kind of, on my SciVive streams, I kind of just leave it open. Like, okay. I think the longest I've gone is like 2.5 hours. So I have no constraint on time. I leave it up to my guest.
I'm in a biohacking meeting every Sunday at 6. So that's about 55 minutes. But
okay.
Went away with the kids, the in-laws, so I could go. Let me just hit like the really important
30.
stuff. Yeah, another
Sure.
30. Sure. So the really important stuff, number one, is sleep. And so to optimize your sleep, there's like very robust science on what to do to improve your sleep. And this will be the most important thing for hormone regulation. So in other words, do all this stuff first before you're even thinking about supplements, because figure out what this meat sack feels like when you're actually doing the right things first, and then try to supplement from that. And so let's start in the morning. You want to wake up and you want to wait at least 90 minutes before having any caffeine. And so there is 2 things that are important for sleep. One is something called sleep pressure, which is called, it starts with an A. I'm losing my train of thought on it. It's like Apigen or something like that. You can Google it. Matthew Walker talks about it a lot. But this is like a chemical that builds up. So it's like the sleep pressure. It builds up over time. And you have like more of this in the morning. So you want to like let that dysregulate before you take your caffeine. So tea or coffee, because that caffeine molecule like binds to it and like captures it essentially. So you just want to let that like dysregulate properly. Caffeine has a certain half-life, which half-life means basically like how long it takes your body, the caffeine, the molecule to like remove from your body. That's specifically why like you don't want to have any caffeine after like 2 p.m. if you're trying to go to bed at like the typical time of 10. If you're something other than a bear and you're maybe a lion, which those are like more of your type A CEOs who wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, or if I think the other 2 are a dolphin and a wolf. Dolphins and wolves, I think, stay up like way later. So if you're that, like just move out, maybe don't have caffeine past like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. I don't know, do the math. But my point is, wait 90 minutes after you wake up before having any caffeine. As soon as you wake up, do your little morning routine, whatever you got to do, use the restroom, take care of your kids, you got to do something for work, whatever. But if you can, I know this is hard for people, but with everything that I say, like if you can't do it right now, develop a plan, like write things down, develop a plan, whether it's a 1-month plan, a 5-year plan, like get to this lifestyle, get to a point where this is your lifestyle, because this is the healthiest lifestyle. So what you want to do is you want to get outside and get real sun all on your face, on your whole body, naked if you can. If I sunbathe, I'm in California, I sunbathe completely naked. I turn around, get grounded, get your feet to the ground. You get negative ions flowing throughout your body. Negative ions are good. Positive ions are bad. Our electrical devices like this computer is emitting positive ions, bad. So don't be around computer like all day long if you can, So that's really important because that will regulate your hormones and your circadian rhythm perfectly. Your body is made up of about 100 trillion non-human cells, like your microbiome, and your brain has its own like microbiome as well. Like what's most known to people is like the gut microbiome, but they're finding like various parts of our body also has their own like microbiome, and these are non-human cells. So our human body is made up of about 40 trillion cells, human cells, trillion with the T. It's a mind-boggling number, but we have about 100 trillion like non-human cells that are in us that are making up like the microbiome. Wow. Every single one of these cells has their own circadian rhythm. So you want to try and get all of those cells in the right circadian rhythm. Then you have a master clock circadian rhythm, which is called your suprachiasmatic nucleus. And so you really want to regulate that properly so that your pituitary gland is converting that serotonin to melatonin at the right time. So you have that right sleep pressure. Getting to bed and going to sleep and waking up at the same time or as close to the same time as possible is super, super important. I know this is very difficult for people if they're traveling. I have kids. My newborn baby don't care about my sleep cycle.
That's right.
But all these things are like, this is what you should aspire to. Like try to do this as much as you can. Those things are super important. Sleeping from 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit has been shown to be the best temperature to get to sleep at. So if that sounds too cold for you, like, you're doing it wrong. The reason why, because your brain has to lower about 2 degrees Fahrenheit to go to sleep. So if that sounds cold, 68 degrees, and put covers over you. You can keep your body warmer. If you really want your brain
Snuggle.
to snuggle, right? Wear socks. Do whatever you got to do. Gloves if you have to. Whatever you got to do. Eye mask really helps. Make sure your room is literally completely dark. And when I say completely dark, I mean completely dark. Blackout shades. Turn off all your devices. Turn them off. Turn your cell phone off if you can. Not just airplane mode. Just turn it off. Your phone's a computer. It needs a break. Power it down. Make sure there's no digital clocks, no TVs. We have all these devices. Turn them off. Every single one of those, if they're emitting any blue light, then that could be affecting even your skin cells. I talked about every single one of your cells has circadian rhythm in it. If this sounds paranoid and crazy, like, good. If this sounds crazy to you, like, then you need a wake up call. This is like, the modern world that we're in is incredible, but it's also killing us. People used to sleep 8 hours a day from, like, the government census. I'm not a big believer in big government, but, like, they probably had this right. 100 years ago, people were sleeping about 8 hours on average. Now your average American, according to these government censuses, are only sleeping about 6.5 hours. It's not good. There's things that we're reverting backwards. Life expectancy actually went down in 2020 and 2021.
Wow.
Again, if you believe these government numbers, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Right.
Trying to finish up on sleep. So get it as dark as possible. Get a blackout drapes. Get a night mask if you can. They're super cheap on Amazon. I highly recommend spending the $30 to buy, like, a nice one.
I just got one.
How do you like it?
I love it. It's like a lavender filled, like, it feels nice. And I feel more well rested. I do. Especially right now I'm camping. So it allows me to sleep in a little bit later because I'm not being, the light is not coming in through my tent. So.
Well, you got your night mask, so you're glamping, right?
Yeah, sure. Someone else asked me if I was glamping. I'm like, I'm a wildest, Jay. Like, there's no glamping here. It's
glamour camping. We got your night mask. That's glamping and sleeping. So you can take a shower about 2 hours before you go to bed. Taking a warm or hot shower will really help. It's actually counterintuitive. It helps lower your temperature of your body and your brain, actually, because you take a warmer shower, you cool off, or you take the warmer shower, and then your body, like, to kind of compensate for that, actually cools down a little bit. But you got to do it about 2 hours before you go to bed. I sauna as much as I can. Realistically, I do it about 4 to 5 days a week. I'd love to do it every day. The best benefits for sauna that have been shown through, like, robust human clinical trials show that you got to get about over 19 minutes at least 4 times a week at 176 to 224 degrees Fahrenheit. Sauna is a whole rabbit hole. All this stuff is a rabbit hole, but basically sauna helps your body create heat shock proteins. One of the 9 hallmarks of aging is loss of proteostasis. It's basically when your proteins get misfolded and damaged. These heat shock proteins can actually help refold your damaged proteins back to how they should be. Yay, we're younger, healthier, or kill off proteins that are too damaged or whatever. And so sauna, I think, really, really can help your sleep too. So if you can get to a dry sauna, do it. Other saunas, are great too. They're just different as far as, like, infrared saunas. I recommend those as well. You can do them both. I'm just trying to finish up on sleep. I think that those are, like, the main things. Turn off the lights, like, as much as you can. Wind down, 2-3 hours before you go to bed. Wear blue light blocking glasses if you can. I keep them all around the house. These are the ones here. They don't have to look. They don't have to be blue. These are just like a 3-pack that I bought on Amazon for like $8. They're super cheap. Nice. Put them on 3-4 hours before you want to go to bed. It blocks the blue light. That blue light is disrupting your brain from converting that serotonin to melatonin. So you can still kind of keep your devices on if you really need to or want to, but put those blue light blocking glasses on. I have an iPhone. If you are an iPhone user, you can hit the button on the side, the power button. You can hit it 3 times quickly. 1, 2, 3. And it goes red like that. It removes all the blue light, right? 1, 2, 3. So your face like that, like all these hacks, these things I've had to learn the hard way, like over time, to figure out how to optimize my entire lifestyle. Like all this stuff to me is better than spending money on like supplements. But if you're doing all this stuff and you're a Hexagon and you got millions of dollars and you don't care about blowing money on supplements, like do it. But like I recommend doing this stuff first, because just hormone optimization is like really, really important for just being the best version of yourself and living a long, healthy life. Final thing on sleep is no, I think that was everything. Yeah, the blue light and like a few hours before you go to bed. So I hope that helps. I just rambled all that stuff off.
That was awesome. Like that, seriously. I mean, because that kind of goes back to answering the first question, right? Like, what are things we can do today, like right now, that are going to help increase our health and our longevity?
Right.
Wow.
And notice like everything I said there is like either free or like super cheap investment to get.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a company called 8 Sleep that like sells these incredible beds that are like $8,000 or something that like change the temperature based off your temperature. It can change the person next to you's temperature. So it's like customize you and stuff like that. I really like my bed, so I haven't bought that yet. But like there's some stuff out there if you want to take it to the next level. It's called 8 Sleep.
Awesome. Very cool. There's one question that I do want to ask, especially because you mentioned the shower thing, and I've been very interested in ice baths and Wim Hof and stuff. And I don't know if this is the same thing, but Crypto already wanted to know, what do you think of cryo energy? Is that, and I, do you, I don't know. Is cryo energy anything close to like the cold shower stuff?
So I'm not sure
Or am
what
I
they mean
totally
by
like,
that. Well, I'm not
okay,
sure what they mean by cryo energy either. So I'm in your same boat, but I will talk about that very briefly.
sure.
I'm a huge proponent and believer in cold therapy, just like I am with hot therapy. So what you'll find is
Okay.
when you do sauna like regularly, your tolerance, your heat tolerance rises dramatically. So now I can be in the sauna. I sit right next to the coals and they have a thermometer there. It's at about 195 degrees Fahrenheit on most days. I do push-ups in there. People are coming in and out for like 10-minute intervals and I'm in there for like 30 minutes, sometimes 30 plus minutes. I always get to 20 unless there's something going on where I have to get home for my kids or something. But same thing with cold. You need to build up a tolerance to this. So just like you wouldn't tell somebody who's never worked out before to go in there and like try and lift like really heavy stuff like that, big, strong people are doing, you need to build up a tolerance. And so there are like Wim Hof. Yeah, I found him years ago. The Iceman, he's incredible. That science is like very legit and it's becoming more and more mainstream. If you can just start with cold showers and any amount that you can do them, even just 30 seconds, I recommend doing those more in the morning. That can be very beneficial. Cold shock proteins are real, just like heat shock proteins. They're beneficial, but it's also really good for hormone regulation. And you just feel great. Like it's horrible when you're in that cold shower, in that cold plunge, like that ice bath, or doing the cryo freeze, like those little things that you go in at like these innovative places and you go in all the way up to your neck and it's like negative 200 degrees for like 2 minutes. It's insanely cold. But our bodies, like we've evolved to be able to not only withstand this, but it basically like activates these longevity pathways, and it makes us stronger over time. It's like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger type thing. It's called hormesis is like the scientific terminology for this. And David Sinclair talks about it a lot. So yeah, I'm a big fan of like cryotherapy or cold therapy. They could have been talking about like cryotherapy, which is like, like cryopreservation, like Alcor and stuff like that, like literally freezing your whole body at very, very sub atomic or sub freezing temperatures so that you can like maybe come back online, come back to life. Like basically like right after you die, if you're signed up for Alcor or other of these, yeah, you get frozen. And then the hope is that when these technologies come about, that you'll be able to be woken up and brought back to life.
That's a
Because
thing. Is that a real thing?
it's a real thing. There's a company called Alcor. They're in
Wow.
Scottsdale. I've interviewed their CEO is Max Moore. I've interviewed his wife, Natasha Vita Moore, and Roger Ver, whatever you guys think about him. He's been into this stuff for a long time. Bitcoin Jesus. He signed up for Alcor in 2000. So he's been into longevity for a long time. I've interviewed him a couple of times and he's a friend. He's a great guy. It's unfortunate, this whole BCH and BTC, drama stuff. But in any event, the point is that this stuff has been around for a long time. It's legitimate science. It's becoming more legitimate. So like if we don't make what's called longevity escape velocity, which is kind of what Ray Kurzweil talked about in that book, The Singularity is Near, right there. That's supposed to happen in 2045, where basically like AI becomes like AGI, artificial general intelligence, and we all become like, we got nanobots going, trillions of nanobots keeping us alive inside of us, going around, keeping us young and healthy. We've solved aging is kind of the idea. And it's called the singularity because the phrase singularity was stolen from math, which was stolen from physics, which is basically, or other way around, which is basically when like the whole paradigm, the model, the belief system of that like whole thing just completely breaks down because of the change. And so that's what like the singularity really means. So you would have to rethink everything in society. And so basically, if the singularity doesn't happen and we don't solve aging in our lifetime, then you might want to consider going to Alcor and like getting frozen or something.
Trippy.
Yeah.
Super
Sorry
trip.
to ramble about
No.
that.
No, it's all good. So we got just a few minutes left, and I think I want to kind of continue on the things that we can do that don't cost a lot and are
Yes.
easy to implement kind of train. So Crypto already has another comment here. The top 7 foods that you recommend. My list consists of sauerkraut, arugula, salmon, cod liver, pecan, extra virgin oil, beets, and all of the cruciferous vegetables. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I am a huge foodie. For those of you that aren't into it yet or haven't heard about it, check out the Telegram group Hex Foodies. There's also a YouTube channel that they do that's more different, a little different permaculture and sustainability and growing organic food. But they also, there's a lot of, they're all hexicans and SciVivalists as well. But yeah, Brent, I'm curious, how do you feel about food, and what kind of foods do you fuel your body with?
Yeah, for sure. This is like all the stuff we've talked about, or most of the things, just a rabbit hole. And I would go back to what I talked about with like personalized medicine, personalized nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
The microbiome is, I think, really important. And I think that like we just need to know more stuff about this. So like when I first had my dad's mom having in like this horrible situation when she was in a nursing home in like 2005, and started questioning this stuff. One of the first like books that I came across, or it wasn't a book yet, but just my research, was The Blue Zones by Dan Buettner, was like just coming out at the time. And if you haven't heard of The Blue Zones, this guy, Dan Buettner, he's also on Instagram. He's a great follower. I think it's Buettner. He's written a few books on this Blue Zone now. It's these 5 places in the world. One is Icaria, Greece. One is Sardinia, Italy. One is Okinawa, Japan. One is Loma Linda, California, which is like an hour inland of Los Angeles. And then one is some peninsula in Costa Rica. I can't remember the name of it. In any event, these are 5 places where like the people are living exceptionally longer than like most places on the planet. And so clearly it has to do with their environment, because they've looked at their genetics and they know it's not just genetics. There's a genetic component to it, but they have like people who've lived in Okinawa and then they've like moved to Hawaii, and then they don't live as long. Now, Hawaii is the longest lived state in the US, California's second. So it's already a very long lived state, but they just don't live as long when they like move from Okinawa to Hawaii. So in any event, my point is like environment is super important here, and lifestyle is super important. So you wouldn't want somebody who is like an Olympic athlete training like that, eating the same diet as somebody who's like sitting around the house all day, or like just on a computer 10 hours a day. So I think that's the first thing to remember, and like take the advice that I gave earlier, is like listen to your body. From there, there's the microbiome is really important. There's a company called Viome, Viome. It stands for Victory of the Microbiome. Their founder is this billionaire guy, Naveen Jain. We interviewed him on my longevity channel. We interviewed Richard there too, so I can share a link in SciVive if you guys want to check those out if you're curious about it. But his company is all about like they send you a little kit to your house. You poop in this little thing that they give you, your stool sample. You send it back to them. They analyze that, and they tell you the foods that you should be eating to maximize your health based off your microbiome. All these little non-human cells that are in your poo, that are came from your gut. It's hard to tell like how legitimate this stuff is. We just need so much more research on it. I've eaten a diet that is said to be good for me based off like Viome's research, but how credible that is, it's really, really hard to tell. So my diet changes with the season and with my lifestyle. So I definitely say try to eat as local as possible, eat within seasons. I just don't believe, frozen fruits are fine. There's actually like more benefits to frozen fruits than even I realized until recently. Like there's actually different chemicals in frozen blueberries than there are in fresh blueberries. Plus,
wow.
Yeah. Plus, with a lot of like frozen fruits and vegetables, they should be, and a lot of these big companies do actually freeze them when they're like at their best like ripeness, because they just don't know what to do with them. There's like too much supply, so they freeze them. So they can be like really good quality. So don't overlook frozen fruits. They're also cheaper. I get a lot of organic frozen fruits from Costco and make a lot of smoothies in my Vitamix and stuff like that. Typically, the foods that have more colors to them have more like antioxidants, and specifically more of those type of things I was talking about, like the hormetic effect. So like those rich colors like purple and, call it blueberry. It looks more like purple to me. But like, if you want to get like purple yams or purple sweet potatoes and stuff like that, those are going to have like more of those chemicals in them that the plant is producing, that is going to potentially help you stay healthier longer. But again, for humans, the irony of all this is we are already a very long-lived species on this planet relative to other species. So it takes a long time to do this proper science and a lot of money to figure this stuff out. So that's why I think I would recommend people look into blue zones. In the blue zones, these people have typically eaten a plant-based diet, whole foods, local, as we talked about, because for years they weren't. These are all like kind of small places. The Loma Linda is kind of the exception there, and in California, but they have a very high Seventh-day Adventist population there per capita, and they're vegetarians. I don't know if folks know that. I'm not religious, but there is that correlation there, and it's believed that's an aspect of it. So, I will tell you though, I follow this guy on Instagram, Liver King. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's a very fascinating guy. He's 45 years old. His real name's Brian Johnson. His wife is Liver Queen. She's almost 50. She's a retired dentist. And this guy eats like nothing but meat. Like he has some carbs, he has some like potatoes and stuff, and he works out like a fiend. So I actually want to do some of these biological aging tests on him to figure out like what his age is. He's in the sun a lot. I mean, look at his face. You can tell he's like 45. He's got the typical face that you would look like if you're in the sun a lot. It's got kind of the wrinkles there, and he's starting to get he looks like a typical 45-year-old guy in the face, but this guy's jacked. And so to me, it all depends on what you're looking for. If you want to live the longest, healthiest life, like great, that's what I'm personally going for. But I also want to be like the best version of myself right now. And I've been to the gym and working out. You want to definitely avoid sarcopenia, put on as much muscle as you can that's comfortable for you, and try and keep that muscle on into your older ages, 40s, 50s, 60s. The 75-year-old woman who commented, that's fantastic. Like really, when you get up to those ages, you got to have muscle mass, because sarcopenia is horrible. You trip, you fall, you break a hip, you break a leg. It's downhill from there. That's what happened to my wife's grandmother. She fell and broke her hip in December 2018. She was living on her own to that point. Not anymore. The last, 3.5 years of her life were pretty bad. She lost her independence. That degraded her whole, quality of life and made her more reliant on all of us. So avoiding injuries is like a huge thing that I should have said by now. Like avoid injuries. We kind of talked about that before with like, the comment of I don't remember his name, but avoid injuries as much as possible is really important for longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read, there's a 2-part comment. Samantha, I saw she had to leave the stream, but she had this really awesome like 2-part comment that I think is kind of good to end on. And then any closing, statements you want to make. And obviously, please shill all the things. I tried to put as many links of yours in the description of this video already. But yeah, so let me read these couple things from Samantha Kelly. She says, she used to be 245 pounds and had so many health issues. Shocker. She said, back then I didn't put the 2 and 2 together and thought it was due to my weight, mindset, and lack of physical movement or exercise. And she says, when it came to mental and physical, I just had the victim mindset that those were the cards I was dealt. Taking responsibility for yourself and your choices is such a beautiful thing and empowering. Beautiful and empowering thing. She corrected herself after that. But I can't agree more, Samantha. I hope you get to watch this whole stream later on. But that's absolutely, having been on a similar journey myself and seeing people in my life who stay in that victim mindset and do not decide to take control of their own health. It's disheartening. It's heartbreaking to see friends and family members that just will not, put that 2 and 2 together and realize that their health is in their own hands. So I just want to thank you so much, Brent, for coming on and having this discussion. One of the last things I did kind of want to ask you is, and maybe the answer is newborn baby, but where you been? I saw that you haven't been on YouTube as much and not making as much content right now, but I guess where you been and what are your next steps in life at this point? And then of course, anything you want to close with.
Yeah, for sure. So, I did a lot of interviews on YouTube for a couple of years, like 2019, 2020, and 2021. I partnered with Lifespan.io in June of 2020 to start the show Lifespan News, where like every week we just talked about like the top 5 stories in geroscience. But that's like so esoteric. And, we weren't getting many views, maybe like 1,500, 2,000. A big one would be like 10,000. And that might sound like to a lot to some people, but like we were hoping to like make it way more mainstream. And then we're just such a small little community right now with Lifespan, like focused content. And same thing with kind of my interviews. I just kind of like got burnt out. I interviewed a lot of great people. I enjoyed it. Those interviews are up there forever. I actually go back and watch some of them sometimes myself and learn some things from 2019 Brent Nally and 2020 Brent Nally and stuff, because people think that I have like a really good memory, but I actually am just a lifelong learner. I'm constantly learning. So I've been taking more time to focus on myself. Like the last year, I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Longevity Plan. It's been a lot of work. I'm a father of 2 kids now. My wife had a particularly very difficult pregnancy. We found out, we think it's because she kind of like her placenta like split when she like had like 2 placentas, and it was like messing with her blood supply. Basically, she felt like hung over almost all of her pregnancy, like very low energy, throwing up a lot. Her hormones were screwed up. Like, so I go back to what I was talking about earlier, like hormone regulation is super, super, super important. So that was a lot on me the last like year or so. Now we have a newborn and stuff. The challenge with my wife's grandmother was a lot. So all this stuff, family comes first to me. I'm doing all this stuff because I want to make the world a better place. I want people to live their best lives, be the best versions of themselves. One of the things that really stuck out to me from that comment is a guy named Tom Bilyeu, who I've learned a lot from. If you guys don't know him, he's got like over 2 million subs on YouTube. He does personal development type content that's really good. His last name is Bilyeuu, Tom Bilyeu. And a couple of years ago, he was selling T-shirts that said, "Everything is my fault." And I love it. It's like, take extreme personal responsibility for your life. We all have complaints. We all have, a story behind us of like limiting beliefs and, oh, this or that happened to me, blah, blah, blah. Like at some point, you just got to like get over that stuff and like just figure out where your life is at right now and make it the best as you possibly can. Develop a plan. Think and Grow Rich is a great book I recommend. Like, if you haven't done personal development, stop everything and get focused on that now. Like, that's what like a big part of SciVive is about. Richard has gone down the personal development rabbit hole a long time ago. That's why when I started watching this crypto stuff in 2017 and then kind of like learning more about who he is and what drives him and what he's passionate about, I was like, wow, we have so much in common because he focuses on the things that actually matter. The news is telling you all this stuff that like you can't control most of it, so try and focus on the things that you can actually control, and you'll find that you can actually control a decent amount of things to improve your life, especially if you think long-term and create a long-term plan. So don't get caught up if some of the things I've said are like, oh, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that. It's like, well, how important is it to you? I can't get blackout drapes. Like, well, develop a plan and you can have blackout drapes, a year from now or something. Oh, I travel too much or whatever. It's like, well, you can actually get a garbage bag, and you can tape the garbage bag to the windows where you're at if you like to travel a lot. My wife and I traveled to 25 countries over 2018, and we went to 4 continents. We figured out how to do this stuff when you're traveling and live as healthy as you possibly can while traveling too. So my point is, like, just have a growth mindset. Don't have a fixed mindset. My last job before I retired was at Microsoft LinkedIn in February 2018. I was selling e-learning. So I've been big into personal development and e-learning for a long time. I was at a company called lynda.com that got acquired by LinkedIn. They rebranded it to LinkedIn Learning, but just always be learning. That's a big thing I've been focusing on. Like the last year, I've been consuming a lot more YouTube content from creators that I really like that are adding value to my life. I'm doing laundry or something, I'm watching it in 2 times speed, like just downloading information in my brain. I can only remember so much stuff, but I know more things than a lot of people because I've consumed like way more content than most people. And it's like important content, not stuff that's just like superfluous, like what's the capital of like Zimbabwe? I don't know. Why does that matter to me? Like I'm trying to make my life better and make other people's life better. So the final thing that I guess I'll say is we didn't talk about fasting. That was, I think, in the thumbnail.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe another time we can do
Yeah,
that. But
absolutely. That'd be great.
super important, and it's the same thing. Personal, listen to your body. I am 165 pounds and 6'1". I am just doing like daily fasting. Maybe every couple months I'll do like a 3-day fast. My last fast was 112 hours from May 11th to May 16th, about 4.5 days. I consumed no calories. I lost about 12 pounds. I think I healed my body on like certain things that we could talk about at some point, but I knew certain things were just not healing. They healed. I feel way better. And then my health has been spiraling up the last few months, been working out more, having more energy, sleeping better. I wear an Apple Watch every night to sleep. I track my sleep. I wear an Oura Ring. I track my sleep. Like my sleep has objectively gotten better since I did this. So maybe I've shared my fasting playlist on my YouTube channel in the SciVive group. I can share that again. I've watched hundreds of videos on fasting over the years. This playlist is about 25 videos that I found that are like not repetitive. It's like, it's kind of the best of the best. So if you're curious about fasting and you watch these 25 videos in my playlist, you'll know like more about fasting than almost anybody. So
that playlist actually encouraged me. I had decided to do a fast, and because I watched a couple of those videos, I was only going to do like a day or two, and then I watched a few of the videos, and I was like, oh, I should at least do 72 hours. So I went for 88 hours just a few days ago, like last week. It was great.
I
So
remember
thank
that.
you for sharing that. Yeah.
That's congratulations. And are you feeling like better? Like that was a week ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel great. I really do. Like I haven't before I did the fast, I had started running, and I haven't gotten back into like the exercise aspect of it, but mentally, emotionally, I feel great. Like I feel like I'm glowing and like I'm on fire. So, yeah,
That's
it did some work for sure.
That's super exciting. I tell people this like at my gym, guys I play basketball with and stuff, and they just look at me like I'm crazy. Like, you didn't eat any food for 112 days. Like, how are you still alive? I'm like, well, like, just educate yourself. It's a big world out there. We have the internet. We have lots and lots of ways to educate ourselves now than we ever did before. And man, truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, and reality is way different than most people perceive. We didn't talk about this, but like I've gone down the rabbit hole in lots of different things. I found Bitcoin relatively early in crypto because I was a banker in 2007, 8, right after I graduated college, and I learned all about like the Federal Reserve and the central banking. And so that's why I was able to like see that stuff. So like the more you educate yourself, the more your eyes can be open, and you can just basically get like cheat codes. And other people who think they're crazy and stuff like that, that's fine. You can I've developed a type of, I'm trying to think of the right word. I've developed some type of I just don't care. I'm like, whatever. You think I'm
Thick
crazy?
skin.
Like, thick skin. Thank you. Like, I know I'm not crazy because I've done the research. It's that confidence. So in any event, the final thing that I'll say is thank you so much for having me on. I hope that your audience has learned one or two things from here. I try to be in SciVive as much as possible. You guys can ask me any questions in there, and I'd be happy to share resources. I don't think any of the resources that I shared are coming back to me for any type of like personal gain, except for maybe my company selling some of these bioaging tests. But my point is that I really don't think I have conflict of interest here, and this is all like pretty easily verifiable stuff if you look into it. It's just kind of more maybe esoteric information, or information that's not valued enough by our society for whatever like weird reasons. I guess we just have a weird society, and we're like coming to learn more about ourselves. But hopefully the zeitgeist is continuing to change, with the internet and with new generations coming into power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Brent. This has been by far my favorite stream on this show so far. Like, I feel like I'm really starting to learn what it is to be a Survivor. And thank you so much for your time and energy. I definitely want to have you back on this show sometime. So we'll keep in touch, and yeah, definitely have some more chats in the future. And I did put there's links in the description. I also posted in the chat about t.me/SciVive is probably going to be your best spot for reaching out to Brent. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and definitely share out this stream because I think that this was just phenomenal. So much great information that anyone can apply to their life. So thank you again, y'all, and take care. Keep sci-viving.